We are up to Daf Mem Gimel Ahmed Aleph, and we started Perik Nigmar Adin. We're now, once the Bezin hands down its sentence, and how do we carry it out? So we discussed where the place for stoning was, outside of the three camps, and there was a certain distance from the Bezdin, and there was a whole protocol where we make sure there's a possibility to save this person, spare this person's life to the very end. Maybe somebody can find a schus. So we are up to the two dots, actually right in the middle of the page. Echad oimed. So there's one person that stands by the bezin with kerchiefs, and there's another person on a horse a distance away. And if as soon as somebody says, "Oh, I can be malamed chus," even if the alleged, no longer alleged, the convicted criminal says, "I can malamed chus," we'll bring it back even 4 or 5 times. But the Mishnah concludes as long as there's substance to what he has to say. So we're up to the Gemara here. Echad Aymed, Omar Abu says, who has to pay for the instruments that the Bezin used to execute this person? Omar Abu, particularly, there's no question. The instruments that we use, the stone that we're going to stone him with, or the tree that we are going to hang him on, or after you get stoned, or the sayif, the knife that we're going to use to kill the person, or the or let's say this the handkerchief we're going to use to perform chenek. We're in Gimel and Aleph, right in the middle of the page. Kulan mishal tzibur. There's no question that this is communal property. My time, it doesn't make sense to tell the person you hand over money so we can kill you. It's just inappropriate to tell the person zeal go. The lay say, bring these instruments so that we can kill you. It just sounds wrong. But my question is, the question, however, is Sudar Sheman by we're just up to Memgim with Aleph in the middle of the page. So we're saying that the instruments we use to kill these people, we don't ask him to pay for it, obviously. But my question, Abhunda says, is what about the things that we use to save the person's life? For example, the handkerchief that this person is standing and waving, or the horse that goes a certain distance from Ma'amidin and stops at Ma'amidin, stops halfway there so that he can see if there's a person to spare this person's life. Wait, who pays for that? Do we say Kim not told the day midday, or since he's here to spare his life, he should pay for it? Since it says possibly it's an onus on the bezin to go ahead and try to spare him. It should be communal. Furthermore, the question is, does a bezin, or we get him to pay mididu? We get him to pay because it's to spare his life. In order to try to mitigate the pain, because we're supposed to kill him, but not supposed to have pain, knowing that one of the reasons why we don't delay justice is because just sitting there and waiting is painful, and that's not part of the punishment. So the same thing here, leading him to the place wherever he's going to be stoned, also there's terrible pain. So to somehow or another confuse him a little bit, or to make him get him high a little bit, so he's not really thinking straight, so you shouldn't be in pain. When you give a little bit of the frankincense, mix it with wine, they should be a little bit, not thinking what's going on. It says, that's what you give the old wine, and the wine, somebody who's bitter. So we use that for Avelim, but also this person here is about to be killed. So the question, who pays for that? But I said, Noshim Kodesh that the Noshim, either the precious women or the rich women in Shalim, out of the generosity of their heart, they would go and give it to these convicted criminals. Very interesting. Why did they do, the convicted criminal, they would go. It's similar to the mother of the Kohen Gadol there, who would go around and give food, learning Marmakas to all the people who were in our mikvah. They should down for a son, but there she had a very vested interest. Here, they would go to the criminals, convicted criminals, in a bezin, and help them out. Wow. It's not. It talks about the sheikhel, this thing here. Who paid for that? So he said, at least that I can answer. this wine that's not part of the mitzvah of Yitzilu. So that mistaber, even so, mistaber shel tzibur kivin ksiv. It says a pasuk tenu. Even though Pisavara, this should be the least because it's not part of the Hitzilu Eda. Hitzilu is to push it to the horse, the kerchief, the flag. This is not, but the pasuk is clearly tenu sheikh aloyvid. So it's an onus on the peasant to give midi to. Very interesting question. What happened when the Talmidim says, I can learn the schus? Remember we learned before that we bring him up to if it's yes by mamish, we bring him up, and the eng by mamish that night, the next day he goes back to his old seat. But if it's yes by mamish, he stays there already. And we had a machlekes where he stays forever in the bezin or just to the end of that case. What happened? The guy says, I have what to say. But right before he started saying what he had to say, he lost the ability to speak. Mao. So do we say, had we heard what he had to say, maybe Bezin would change their mind and be mazaka the person. So therefore Bezin should just accept it and walk away. Or do we say the fact that we didn't hear what he had to say? And Rashi says a very interesting thing. What I mean, the guy should go home for free. Rashi says, and appoint a new Bezin, which actually in Svara is very hard to understand. If there is a svara out there in the world that we don't know about, that possibly that the person is innocent, might not have come into this bezin or the next bezin, what's the difference? The point he didn't say it. Just because he said, I have something to say, and you want to say, had we heard it, maybe convinced, and the next bezin, had they heard it, also would have might have been convinced. So what's the chilik the next bezin? Somehow or another, Rashi seems to be learning because they heard the person say, I have what to say, they have some kind of responsibility maybe to pursue it. The next bezin didn't hear it, so no difference hearing this person here or somebody. Maybe somebody obviously has something to say which tomorrow will reject. So maybe other bezin is different. He made with his hand and say, what kind of question is that? If you're going to entertain the idea and maybe have something smart to say, so then every time maybe there's somebody in the world who's smart enough to stand there and defend him. So how can you kill anybody? That the Gemara says doesn't make sense what you're asking. We don't know if there's another person out there, but here's a guy saying, I have what to say. How do we treat that? Toshma, coming here. Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina, so we had before. What happened to Tamidim? That was actually Mazaka. He voted. He said something that was Mazaka the person. He came out to defend the person, but that remains, and he died. We consider as if he's alive and his vote is treated as a schus. In his place. So we treat it, so since Rabbi Chanina says that, but when does Rabbi Chanina say we treat it as if the person is there? Only if he said what he had to say, that he's mazaka. So zikain, loy zikaloi. Maybe we're medayik in Rabbi Chanina's words, only if Lepoil he said his svara, why he thinks the guy is innocent, only then do we treat it, even though he died, as if he's still alive. But if he didn't say what it is, he said, I have something to say, and then he lost his ability to speak, maybe not. Says the Gemara, loy zika, the mukayim zika in, loy, one second, zika, loy zika loy, but it may be if he wasn't mazaka, it seems from Rabbi Yochani's words that it's nothing. The fact he didn't say anything. Says the Gemara, zika pshitoli. No. That is obvious. If he was mazaka, that's obvious. My question is, Omar tibayalach. In other words, you're being, and your deal is only if it wasn't Mazaka, but if he said having to say, we can't be Medayik one way or another. Didn't say bigger Chiddush, because the chances of that happening, that he opens his mouth, I have what to say, and boom, suddenly he lost the ability to say anything, is so rare that he didn't bother to. More that sorry? Yeah. A guy has shown, dying in the middle, after he said what he had to say, the next day, remember, he has to be Halon as Din. Oh, that makes sense. But in the middle of talking, you should lose the ability to speak. So no die one way or another, and we don't resolve it. I feel who we said that even the convicted criminal, if he says I have what to say, we bring it back 3 or 4 times. But then the Mishnah says only if he has yesh by mamish. It seems from here about even the very first time, if he says I have what to say, we'll only bring it back if there is substance to what he has to say. The first 2 times I have what to say, doesn't matter whether there's mamish in his words or not, we bring him back. Mekan ve'elech, the third and fourth time, im yesh mamish v'od of machzino. I say the substance will bring him back. Ein mamish v'od of machzino. No. So what's going on here? I'm going to pop you right. Targuma, we should learn pshat in our Mishnah when our Mishnah says we bring him back. Bavadchi yesh mamish v'od is only third and fourth time. Only after the second time. How do we know that the substance is words? I'm going to buy you the masin lezuga de rabban. So no, the first two times that he came back, he doesn't have. He has the henchmen, the executioners. The third time, we're now going to send Tamid Chachamim. After the second time, if he goes back again, we send two Tamid Chachamim to escort them, so that if he has something to say, they have to first hear whether there's substance to what he has to say. So why not so why the first two times we accept, even if he had nothing to say, we bring him back, bring Tamid Chacham from the beginning, and hear what he has to say. Maybe the first time also he had nothing to say. Says the Gemara, no. The first two times he's very nervous. Agav the boy, he's so nervous he can't speak freely. But once he already came back two times, he sort of settled down a little bit. He can think straight, so we can have Tamid Chacham. Says the Gemara Mishnah, if they found a schus, they send him away. If not, if he was convicted, we take him out for stoning. In other words, if he defended himself and it looked like he had what to say, okay, we'll send him home free. But if not, we continue going to the space of skillet. The karus yaitze lifnei lefonav, and there's an announcement made, a declaration made, only after he was sentenced and as he's being led to his skillet. Ish plaini ben plaini yaitze l'sakol, this person is going to be stoned. Al sha'over abeda plainis, because this is the way he did. Uplaini, and why are you making this announcement? To help the guy out. Uplaini Edav, Yankel and Shmedel were the Adim. Call me Shiyadei Laschus Yavah the Yilmad Allah. If you're Adim Zayman out there, anybody out there, come and help now. Omar Abaya, and we'll soon see why we didn't make this announcement before we convict him. Why after you convict him? Omar Abaya, the Tzadich L'meima, you have to say B'yom Plani, B'shar Plani, since you're trying to invite Adim Zayman, you got to give the time, be very definitive. The day, the hour, Uvamak Plani, and the place. Maybe it'll be people who can be mazim. Says the Gemara, the Kodesh Yaitz Lefon make an announcement Lefon of in that only while they're walking after the conviction, but but not 40 days before. Now, there's missing a whole piece of Gemara here, so I'll quickly tell you what it says here.
You have to do the skill day after the sack. Then how can you 40 days before? You can't kill.
Good question, but you don't even announce none. When this person was accused, for whatever reason, didn't make this, they didn't have it to tell you. You don't have to tell it straight away. Maybe they're waiting for Aiden to come. If this person is accused, you don't make an announcement before the Bezin convenes. Hey, this is the allegation. If anybody knows any evidence, please come up forward. So what the censor, I'll tell you what the censor took out, and I'll tell you what my little problem here is. The censor took out here was, so Gemara asked a question for you before. What about Yoshka? When Yoshka did his thing on Pesach, they announced 40 days before that they're gonna stone him, and they also is plus 5 of his talmidim, and so the Gemara says Shiny Yisha Hanitzri because he was a Karav Malchus. Now that. Everyone says Yoshka, and they use that as proof that the Sanhedrin actually killed him. But that is very difficult historically because Yoshka was not Karav Malchus. In fact, they thought he was a big troublemaker, a rabble rouser, and the Pilate, Pontius Pilate, Pontius Pilate, the Romans, his son. But Pontius Pilate was the Roman representative in Jerusalem, and they were not Karav Malchus at all. But it does say in this forum there was a number of people by that name over the years, because the years don't match up. And the Maisa we had in the last time, doesn't match up at all. So the years. So, but remember he was davening and he came over and he tried to tell him something, and then eventually he wanted to, because he said about a woman there and he wanted to tshuva and boom, he was saying Krishma or something. But then he named the 5 Talmidim. One of them is Machi, and each Talmud came along and brought a pasuk to say that you have to let me live, and then the Gemara answered, but you have to read the whole sentence. And the Gemara came back and said, oh, you haven't heard the Zeros in Hagoyis Tzionim, right? Yeah. They put in the text. Oh, okay. So each one brought a pasuk to prove that he's innocent, then they brought a pasuk back. So one is Matthew, which is Matthew. But the other 4, one is Nicanor, which might be Luke, but Luke wasn't an apostle, he was just a Talmud. But the 3 others, Toida, I don't know who that is. If that's even as there's Toida, there's Buni, and Levoni. These are not names that we are familiar with from his Talmud, whatever it is. So, L'chayda, this story is about somebody else.
The names went through Greek and Roman and
could be. Luke was questionable if he was Jewish or not, but it sounds like if it's says you go there, Karl the Malchus Hoya. But look right before the name. It says that you're going to answer shiny here because he was Karl of the Malchus. That is difficult to understand if it's Yoshka, because he was not Karl the Malchus at all. They thought that he was a threat. He was Messiah, and he was going to whatever he was a threat to them, and he was trying to cause trouble. I don't know. And let's continue. But that's Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, yeah. You know, Rashi says that Borim Yom Kaidim. You have to wonder where does the Borim Yom come from? The Gemara just says Lefon Avimi Karloi. Pashup Pshat is only once he's convicted, not before the conviction. Where does Rashi get the Borim Yom? So Rashi clearly had that whole Gemara there. The Gemara says, but he was 40 days before they made that announcement. And also by Yoshka, they didn't make the announcement 40 days before. The whole thing happened by Pesach by night, and the whole story doesn't make sense because
this is Tombuku, but Erev Pesach.
Yeah, exactly. The story didn't even happen. And the whole story is that at night, the Seder, the Last Supper, was supposed to be the supper. I know, the whole thing doesn't, from beginning to end, the story doesn't stem, even though it's always used by everybody. This is our Gemara's version of what happened, but the whole thing doesn't make sense. And not only that, Erev Yom Tov, we don't pass. We just said before that Erev Yom Tov, we don't sit down for dinner lefashis. So this is nothing about the story that makes sense. So I don't know what's going on here.
Just a general question about that. The 40 days, I thought once you've convicted him, it's got to be carried out the very next day. What's 40 days?
The same day. That means they killed him before Pesach, and yet the whole story was Judas.
No, not to do with that. Just in general, why do we have the concept that you've got 40 days to change it? He's going to be dead already.
Oh, yeah. No, so the Gemara's question was, do we make the announcement before you when we sit and try the person? We'll say, look, there's an allegation here, before we listen to any witnesses, before we sat down, to hear the case. We say there's an allegation that this person here committed a murder on this and this day, blah, blah, blah. If anybody has anything to say about it, please come.
Yeah.
Before the trial began. That's and Mishnah seems to say no, only after the conviction. Rashi is the one who brings in 40 days. Now, where does 40 days come from? So obviously Rashi had this version of the Gemara that we just had here, that particular story, but who that story happened with is hard to understand, if it ever happened, because Erev Pesach, as we just pointed out, there's no Bezdin. You don't sit there.
Maybe the Goyish tradition that we've all heard over the years about the whole episode.
Yeah, but Erev Pesach, we don't sit down.
Maybe that was
maybe, who knows? But for that, Erev Pesach, a Bezdin does not sit down.
Tombuku was the next day.
Well, we don't do that.
They told him the next day.
Yeah, so the whole thing is hard to understand. Anyway, let's continue.
They have to take him down before night.
Next page. Because does the article have the whole thing? Nothing. They didn't want to bring it either. That's interesting.
You put it in English.
Anyone who slaughters his Yetzirah, the Yetzirah tried to induce you to do an Avera, and you don't listen. Misvada olav, or he did listen, but now he regrets it. And he says, he honored Hashem in two worlds, in this world and the world to come. It says, that's that somebody shechs a carbon toida in plural. You honor me in two worlds. Interesting. The toida here we use as word as misvada, not the carbon toida, but which interpreting toida means, and you said vidui, you confessed. In fact, there's an advantage today over those days. In those days, whatever carbon you brought, you were limited to that carbon. You brought a carbon oila, you got a reward for oila minchas, minchu yodei alamisha daita shvela. But somebody who is das a shvela, that means that he is humble. Milo v'kosav kilhi kol kabbanas kul. He brought all the kabbanas, all of them. Remember it says zivche lekim ruach nishbara, that a ruach nishbara, a broken heart, is zivche lekim. All the kabbanas is covered. Whatever he davens will not be despised or turned away. Remember it says leiv nishbara v'nidka, that anyone has a broken heart. Elikim leisevaza. God will not, Hashem will not insult you. Send me further. When they're about 10 amos away from the base of Skila, so they can already see the place where they're going to stone him. Or they tell him, he's Savada. Say Vidu. Anyone who gets killed by Bezin has to say Vidu. Anyone who says Vidu has a chelik in the world to come. The exception is if a person was killed. We'll see. Okay, we'll see in the more later. She came at Sina Ba'achan. We find by a person called Achan. Now, who's Achan? We're going to learn a whole more about Achan. So I'll tell you more about tomorrow. But we're going to learn about Achan today, and that is that Achan. What happened was Yeshua. We went into Yericho. They surrounded Yericho over 7 days. Nobody was hurt. From there, they went to a city called Ai. Ai was a small little city in the hills, so they thought 3,000 soldiers will be enough. 36 Eden were killed. Machlek is whether 36 Eden were killed or whether Menashe, or was it? Yoyeb ben Menashe was killed, who was equal to 36 of the Bezin, of the Sanhedrin. He was an unbelievable godel. And Yeshua couldn't believe it. What's going on here? Richa is such a major city. Nobody was killed. Here we killed. He did a research and he found out that somebody sinned because he said no one should take from the plunder. And Achan turned out to be he took from the plunder. In fact, we didn't know it was Achan. We knew somebody took from the plunder. And I was thinking more about what actually happened. And Achan then was killed for what he did, and he was stoned. And Achan said Vidu. And Bekitzer, what Achan did, Achan, the oldest prayer that we have in davening is Aleinu and Al Kenekava. Who wrote Aleinu? Yeshua. So Krishma is the Torah. Who wrote Aleinu? Yeshua. And who wrote Al Kenekava? Achan. In fact, the first letters of Al Kain Nekava is Achan. When he did tshuva, right before they killed him, he wrote Al Kain Nekava. Get rid of all the Gevulim and get rid of all the disorder. And Oleinu starts with an ayin and ends with a dalid, and Al Kain Nekava starts with an ayin because it's the, but the ayin and ends with a dalid. That they're both, we're two Eidim. Yeshua and Achan are two agents to the greatness of Hashem. But what Achan achieved through his we'll see in the Gemara, that Gemara says the worst things about Achan, and yet he made a prayer that we all say every single day, including Yom Kippur, is that this is when we found out the idea of Kol Yisrael Rebim Zebazeh. We're culpable because of what Achan did, and we found out from Achan. So Achan brought out the best of Yiddishkeit, which they're all responsible for each other. So therefore, and then he was Misvada, so therefore he was Zeichet to these things there. Anyways, it's amazing. And Aleinu, okay, we have no time, but the beginning of every paragraph, the first letter, you go backwards is Yeshua. Anyway, weiter. Yeshua said to him, do me a favor, the 10 Leute Teide. You're right. I did it. He was Moida. He was Misvada. I should keep a living doing work. And it says, you despise us, you brought disgrace on us only this day. This world, not that world. Many daily Svadas, we tell them, if you don't know, at least say these words. My misa should be a kapara for my sins. If you know you're innocent, then you should say, Tehemi Sasi Kapora, and unfortunately nobody there to defend you. The Eidim were liars, you know that. Like the Ma'aseh Shema Shatach, we'll learn later. But you have no choice, so you say, my Misa should be Kapara, all my other sins. Chutz Ma'avinzen, you add the word, but not for this one, I didn't do it. Amrullah said to me, you can't do that. You call Adam Im Kain every person before he dies. Yeah, look at it, said to me, well, the Bezin now will look terrible because people say, he must be saying the truth right before he dies. What a Bezin over here, corrupt. No, you can't allow that to happen. The cover of a business, we're learning more numbers. The elusive Beit Din is very important. Don't everybody learn? No, Yeshua is pleading with Achan. The Eden sinned. Who sinned? Said, am I a tattletailer? Go make a girdle. The girdle fell on Achan. And to give it the room, big problem with what I always have this Gemara is, the Rashba writes you cannot mock a girdle. A girdle is a real thing. It's from a Shemayim. So what David just said, I'm not going to tell you, but I'll tell you through a girdle. So what's the difference? Why isn't that called dilter? What's the difference? If a goydel is real, then what's the difference? Unless somehow no, because what, a bit more distance. That's not lashon hara anymore. Yeah. Sorry, what happened there? Amal Yeshua begoidel at the boy lie. So Achan said to him, Yeshua, the goydel, what? You made a goydel and I lost. So you know what he said? What happens? I'll tell you what I'll do. If a goydel is in a shemayim, I'm going to make a goydel that one of you two actually deserve to be killed, and one of you, the goydel will fall out of one of you. Are you going to tell me that what? That therefore means that you have to get killed? A goydel means nothing. He was mocking the whole idea of a goydel. Definitely fall on one of you. Amala Yeshua said, do me a favor. Don't mock godolas. Shasida Jesol Shechal Godel is real. A goydel comes from the Eibishter. We're going to divide Eretz Yisrael and Parshas Pinchas based on godolas. And we had in Babasa. And it says, Ag begoydel Yichal Godolas. Do me a favor, 10 toider. Admit to your sin. Ravina said, Shechude shachte b'mile. He enticed him with words. Kalum nevakish mecha. This is what Yeshua said to him. All I'm asking you is, Hayda, be maida. Tell Hayda be potter. As if to say, go be maida and you go home. You're right. Big question that everyone asks. Yeshua lied. Yeshua lied to him. Are you allowed to lie? And there was a shaila in one of the Rishonim. If a guy says to him, do me a favor, you owe me $100, and then you can go home. I'm not going to ask you ever for the money. I want to hear you be Maida. So the guy was Maida. So the other guy said, no, let's go to court. You just Maida. Can he say, I was only Maida on the condition that I don't have to pay you? So you see from the Gemara, and they bring from this Gemara here, that Achad could have said, I was only Maida because you said I can go home. Otherwise, I'm not murder. I just did you a favor. I wanted to humor you. Seems like it's not a China. But they have a problem. How can Yeshua be dishonest? So someone will learn that he didn't say those last words. He potter. He just says, what do you call it? He just said, just be murder. And Achan understood that what Yeshua meant to say was, just be murder, and then go home. So it was Achan's misunderstanding, not that Yeshua in any way deceived him. Others say, no, Yeshua Taka meant it. You're no longer chai b'din shamayim. In this world, you're going to be punished. But in Olam Haba, exactly. So he wasn't lying at all. That's what he meant. A little bit cryptic, but at least, okay. Anyway. Achan did it twice in Moshe Rabbeinu's time as well. Not only did he say, that he says, Noiche Chatasi, that's for now, but then Ukazais, 2 other occasions as well. But Shimon, Chamisha. Moshe, it says Noiche Chatasi, that's now. Then he has and Ukazais. Could have just said Kazais. Every time it's an and, it's like 2. And Zais. And about that, so I'm going to ask a simple question. If he did it 4 times in the times of Moshe Rabbeinu, why was he only punished by you? Why was he punished earlier? My time why was he punished earlier? When the Yidden crossed the Yarden, they became responsible for each other. And according to the Rabbi Rab Shimon, they were responsible. Even if you don't know that person committed an Aveda, every Yid is responsible, intertwined with each other. In fact, the Machlekes Tanoi will be, we know that Kol Yisrael Reim Zeb B'Zeb, we're responsible not for only good for the bad as well. If he does an Aveda, is it only Haniglis, only the Avedas that we know about and we could have stopped them, or even Hanistadas that we had no idea? But if a Yid now a miss committed an Aveda, then everyone is culpable. So we have a Machlekes tonight. It says Hanistadas Hashem Lekeinu Haniglis Lonu L'Vaneinu Adolam. So Hanistadas today, but Haniglis Lonu L'Vaneinu Adolam. There's a whole bunch of dots on the word Lonu and L'Vaneinu, and Ad. What do all these dots mean? Lama Nokad Alonu L'Vaneinu Val Ayin Sheba'ad. Why is there in all these Nakudas on Lonu L'Vaneinu and the Ayin of Ad? Malamish L'Hanish Hanistadas Ad She'Ovrish Yisrael Zayadin. To teach you that we were not punished for the Nestadas until they crossed the Yarden. So since nobody knew that Achan stole or plundered in the times of Moshe Rabbeinu, therefore nobody got punished. When it comes now over here, nobody knew either that Achan did it, right? We read the story and no one knew, but now we're punished. So I mean, this is a big ass that we are responsible for people doing Avedas that no one knows about. That's what Rabbi Shimon Levi Yehuda. Omelette and the Chem argues. What do you think we're ever responsible if somebody commits a Veda discreetly? And it says in Pasuk Ad Olam. Ad Olam goes also on Hanishtadas Shem Lekenu. The Nishtadas remain with the Eibusha Ad Olam forever. And Ad Olam. We're only responsible for things that we knew about that we could have prevented. We only got punished on Sonoas. We got punished for Achan, not before because it doesn't matter, we weren't responsible, but afterwards responsible at least for things we knew about. Pretty Gemara, knew Achan. No one knew about Achan. Remember, I had to make a girdle. My time, Yonish should have a Yodebe Ishtei Bon of his wife and children. Now the Meforshim have a hard time understanding. So what? So what is wife and children? But why the rest? Nobody else knew. They kept it to themselves. So why would the rest of Klai? Why? No, as it sounds from here that if one other person knows already about it, it's no longer considered Hanish status. The status is of only you yourself know and no one else. Chot Yisrael, the Eden sinned. I'll just go a little bit further. A famous saying that Yisrael, or even though he sinned, he's a Yisrael. Gail Haloch L'Maiser. I'll tell you tomorrow. Tomorrow is Chodesh, so we're going to start 10 past. Amar Abba, how many should be to say? Asa, Hadas, the Koi Bein Chilfu, that's between the Arabas, Asa Shmei. A rose by any other name is still called a rose. But Asa Karla is still called a Hadas. And from here they learn out halacha like that Rizal, because the big machlekes, how people put around the lul of the Hadas and Arava. Where does the Hadas come between Arava? What's what we're talking about? So they want to use this as a basis for the Rizal, because some people have the Hadassim totally separate from the Aravas and have these things sticking out. And others have, like by us, the Hadass and Aravas all together. And that's what Rizal says, and they use this as his basis for that. Interesting. You're never thinking Sanhedrin will be a basis how to do a lulav, how to set up a lulav. Anyways, I'm going to write the Gam over as Brisi that Achan would transgress the covenant that I told them. What are you talking about? Gam Lochem and Achedim, they took from the Chedim, the Gam Gonvu, they stole, Gam Kochra, they denied. And the Gam Som claim, all these terrible things they plundered. There are 5 things said of it. Gam. He did every Aved in the Torah. I mean, look what this Achan is. It's unbelievable. And yet he composed Al Kain the Kaaba. Just put that into perspective here. He did every Aved in the Torah. He took away his bris milah as well. See, from one little Aved, for what, stealing for plunder, we find out that he's the worst of the worst. He was a Moshe Bar Lossi. Here it says Begam Abru as Brisi, and we had it before by other Medicine as well. Kliv Hasan says there's Brisi Hafe. He cancelled his bris. So if he was over every Aved in the Torah, bris milah, one of the mitzvahs. Ma'otem the mitzvah, the goof in the pocket. He only did Aved, stealing from the Eibush or whatever, on himself, on his own body. No, Kamashlan. He didn't even that. And it says over there in the pasuk that he took he plundered and he did this terrible atrocity amongst the Eden. Where else do you find the word Nevola? By Naid HaMarasa, somebody rapes this girl. That was Boyle also Naid HaMarasa. What's the chiddush? We just said he was over every Aved in the Torah. Obviously, every Aved in the Torah includes that. No. To that extent, a married woman who just got a young girl, Kamashlan, not even that. It meant not that he committed that Aved, but his punishment is like a Naid HaMarasa that deserves skila. And yet he wrote Al Kain the Kabbalah.
It's a big effort to be over every at the same time. It's not so simple.
Okay, but he still lived a good life because he was only caught in times of Yeshua. Okay, have a good day, and tomorrow we'll start 10 past 7 because there's Chodesh.
Yeah.